leads me to remember what was really one of the most interesting nights of my life, which is when I was invited to speak at the hall where Malcolm X was assassinated in Harlem. There was a political prisoner's benefit. There were supporters of people from the Move 9 who were still locked up at that point. There were supporters of Mumia Abu-Jamal and Jamil Al-Amin. And I walked into this auditorium, and they had like a light where at the spot where Malcolm X had died, and I was on a panel, and I was like the one white guy there. People were joking about the flyer, and they're like, one of these speakers is a little bit different than all the other ones. But, I was the only white guy there, and I looked out on that audience. I spoke for like 3 minutes. It was a very short presentation. But when I looked out on that crowd of several hundred people in there, I thought, I am speaking to a group of veterans. I looked out on that crowd because these were black liberation fighters. These were Black Panthers. These were Black Liberation Army former members. These were black nationalists and others, and in walkers. And when people were speaking, they were shaking and having flashbacks, and there were a lot of tears in their eyes. And I thought, this is like a veterans gathering. This is like speaking at the VFW, right? And I mean, there's rooms like this in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. There's rooms like this in South Africa. There's rooms like this in People's Korea, and this is a group of people who have made great sacrifices, and they're there to support their comrades who are still locked up. And they're in this for real, and they've seen it. And I looked out on that crowd, and I thought, again, these are people who understand how serious it is, and this is how important all of this can be. And, obviously our call for a blanket amnesty for January 6th is not limited to just them. We call for Leonard Peltier to be released. We call for Mumia Abu-Jamal to be released. We call for all political prisoners to be released, all black liberation fighters, blanket amnesty. If you want to heal a society, if you really want society to heal from the pain of the trauma of these kinds of things, where we know the FBI and COINTELPRO did all kinds of illegal things and none of them went to jail, you got to have a blanket amnesty. And it's just that simple. Same for J6, same for all the political prisoners in the United States. And also, I remember it was just recently David Gilbert, who was one of the Weather Underground people, was released from jail. And I don't think people really realize the circumstances in which he was released, because it's very interesting. Our governor in New York is a guy named Andrew Cuomo. And Andrew Cuomo was forced to resign from office. There was a scandal, and one thing led to another, and many people say there was a bigger scandal that he didn't want to come out, so he was forced to resign. And the New York State Troopers Association was not supporting him. And so just before Andrew Cuomo was set to leave office, he decided to issue a pardon, a commutation of sentence, for someone who was charged and had spent years behind bars for killing a state trooper. It was basically Andrew Cuomo saying, you guys are not going to support me. This important association of state employees are going to call for me to resign. Well, I'm going to free David Gilbert. I'm going to free one of the weathermen. There you go, guys. That was basically what he was doing. Well, I mean, good, good. And there are divisions in the ruling class. Weird things happen, And, we don't endorse what David Gilbert did, but we recognize that, that there should be a blanket amnesty, and that sometimes you have to utilize these divisions in the ruling class. And that's what gets me back to this, because it's pretty clear there are people in the ruling class that want this to continue. But more than that, I started out this talk by reading the quote from the legendary investor Jim Rogers. And there are people in the United States, in the capitalist class, that are tied into this new emerging economy. And that creates an opening for us. And we would be fools if we did not figure out a way to fit ourselves into the crack to break this whole thing down. We would be fools if we didn't do that. We just stood on the sidelines and tried to be pure. Oh, we're so pure. We're so ultra-revolutionary. Look how pure we are. We would be fools. And there could be a moment where if we were to advocate this continuing, or to continue advocating peace with Russia and China, or to continue advocating economic development, where we could have a real impact.